hoopinhoops.com. Don't forget to subscribe. Okay, so let's get straight into it. The Suns eliminated the Clippers in another competitive game. I know that is what was expected, given that the Clippers were playing without both Paul George and Kawhi. But even with the loss, I can't help but wonder what if. We saw Kawhi play two games, win one, lose one. And I imagine if Kawhi played all games, the Suns would still find a way to win the series. It would not end in five, but the Suns would win. But if both Paul George and Kawhi were healthy, we have to wonder. And the thing is that might just be the best chance the Clippers possibly had to go all the way to the NBA Finals, at least for a while. Think about this. The Suns were lacking depth, and all their scoring were coming from primarily two players, Durant and Booker. Now, of course, we saw Chris Paul contribute here and there. We saw DeAndre Ayton contribute, but they were not primary scorers. The Clippers, they're deep, and they're deep enough to throw defenders at both KD and Booker to make it difficult. And I'm not saying that, you know, they would stop them, but they would make them really work. So if both Kawhi and Paul George was there, you really got to wonder. Next up would have been, you know, the winner of the Warriors Kings. And I have to say, the Kings are lacking experience. So I know it sounds a little cliche, but I'll rule them out a little bit. The Warriors, based on the season they had, I don't know. The Clippers might just be able to take them, especially with, you know, the road record. Um, then, you would look at the winner of, the well, not the winner, but the Nuggets actually, because the Nuggets actually won the series. And yeah, the Nuggets, I just don't know because the Nuggets, they're they look vulnerable, but at the same time, I've learned not to underestimate them. They might be the most troublesome. And of course, there is the winner of the Lakers Grizzlies. And, you know, the Clippers has owned the Lakers, at least in the past 10 games. So they've got a good shot there. The Memphis Grizzlies, they're exciting, but, they don't have Stephen Adams, Brandon Clark to help on defense. So I think the Clippers has a good shot against them as well. Also, I don't think Memphis, um, they're ready. They seem a little immature. So it's a bit of a shame that the Clippers lost both Kawhi and Paul George. The other thing is, I also don't like when persons go out there questioning players' injury, especially when they have no basis for doing so. You always know when they're going to say something outrageous when they start with, I'm not going to say or I'm not going to do. So I listened to this reporter, and he is not saying that, you know, or saying that he's questioning Kawhi's injury. More or less, he's saying, I don't question Kawhi injury, but when you look at Paul George, you see him get injured on the court. But with Kawhi, he played the night before and he scored a ton of points, and the next day he's sitting on the bench and you hear him injured. Now tell me, how is that not questioning Kawhi's injury? I mean, I just got to laugh at this one because, you know, that seems like the very definition of questioning someone's injury. And no matter how many times he say he believe Kawhi's injured, his following statements seem to say the opposite. And now it comes out that Kawhi has a torn meniscus. You know, some people say things for TV ratings, and I understand, you know, the ratings are important. But come on, man, you know. So the Celtics Hawks series is one where we all knew Boston was going to win, and they did. But I will tell you, the Celtics looked vulnerable. The series was kind of shaky for them. Even the final game where they finished off the Hawks. For the first 3.5 quarters, there was some uncertainty as to who would win the game until Boston went on a 16-6 run. Last year, I remember the Celtics went into the season with momentum on their side. The playoffs this year, I cannot see the same. The other thing is, last season, Boston looked more solid defensively. This year, they increased the shooting or the 3-point shooting, and I guess persons are speaking about, you know, the offensive efficiency increasing, you know, but I'm not ready to say that they will be in trouble with the Sixers, irrespective of the offensive increase in efficiency, especially, you know, with how they handled the Sixers throughout the regular season. But I could tell you this, I'm not confident about the Celtics as I did last playoffs. The Heat also finished off the Bucks, and I will say I did not see that coming. Okay, at least not in 5 games. But of course, coming down from 3-1 is always a tall order. The thing is, since the Bucks lost, persons are coming out of the woodwork with all sorts of comments. They're questioning Giannis' ranking in the game. There are those who question his comments after the game. I mean, and we could go on with all the things they're saying. This is the thing. Um, Giannis said after the game that he did not see the season as a failure for the Bucks. He was asked his opinion and he gave it. So what I'll do, I'll put person's argument into two categories, just to keep this a bit short. Those who say past players like Kobe, MJ, Bird, etc., they would look at the season and based on how it ended, the fact that they did not win a championship, they would call it a failure. Okay? Those persons who make those statements also would say that if you're in the MVP conversation, if your team has the number one ranking in the regular season, then of course, expectation should be that you should win it all. Then there are those who also break the season down into regular season and postseason. And the argument would be that the postseason was a failure. Let me start by saying that although I fully um, do not agree with Giannis, I agree with most of what he says. But I want to focus on persons' reactions to his comments. When persons say that past players would say that the season was a failure, they make it seem like what people say or did in the past is the only way. And success is defined in many different ways. And if Giannis' definition of success is met, then who is to say, you know, the season was a failure? But let me go a little further. Take, for example, some players back in Bird's era played with injuries, significant injuries. But as knowledge increases, as we know the potential long term effects on the body, there is no need to take such risks. Take a look in the past, you know, and you look at some of the injuries and the length of years persons played. In addition, of course, to increase in medicine, advancements in medicine, and you could tell, it may not have been the best idea to play injured. Let me put it in these terms. A number of years ago, persons thought the earth was flat. They thought the earth was the center of the universe. We know different now. Are we going to say that this individual of great stature from the past viewed earth, in this particular way? So we'll continue to think of earth as the center of the universe? Obviously, we can't continue to do that. The over reference on persons of the past that said or did certain things, it's starting to get really stale. Make no mistake, I understand the nostalgia about it because I get nostalgic as well about past events. But there has to be a rationale, for putting a basis of things that take place on simple past statements or past deeds of historic players or past historic players. Then there are those who divide the season into regular and post-season. Okay? And I will say this: getting the number one seating is not the only measure of success. Just like winning a championship, irrespective of who the player is. Persons are not questioning the regular season, so I'll not dwell on it. But it's the postseason they're questioning. Giannis got hurt within 11 minutes of the first quarter of game one. So, more or less, he missed almost the whole game. He went on to miss the next two games. Seeing his team was down 2-1, he did not want them to fall to 3-1. So he tried to come back. He obviously was hurt. And you could see that based on how he walked, how he moved throughout the game. Okay? They lost the game anyway. He gave it a go in game 5 as well. But of course, he still was not himself. He still was hurt. And you could have seen that. Those who watched the game could tell. Giannis hardly made efforts to go downhill to attack the basket. There are times he would try to post off, spin off his defender, but he was not really attacking the way he normally would. They lost game 5 and the series. My personal feeling, of course, is that, they should have won game 5. In fact, I don't think the game should have gone into overtime. Coach Bud had two opportunities where he could have called, time out within, I think, the last 6.5 seconds left in the game. But he never called those timeouts. And I mean, the regulation ended, and he still had this one timeout. So I don't know what he kept it for, but that's a whole nother story, you know. But given the circumstances, to argue that the Bucks did not win a championship, so the series, the season was a failure. I think that's a little ludicrous. You know, change of situations gives cause for change of expectations. Note, I did not even mention that Chris Middleton, who came back, who recently came back from an injury, did not look like himself either. Let me just say this, you know, to put a little more perspective, and I will go to a different sport. I know it's an individual sport as well compared to a team sport, track and field. During Usain Bolt reign, there were a number of athletes who ran for the US. Great athletes. You know, for 3 consecutive Olympics, Bolt won the gold in the 100 and 200 meters. Now, these athletes who ran, you know, they got personal bests, and I believe they even broke the 100 meters record for the US in one of those events as well. All of that in losing efforts. But because of the greatness of these athletes, a person's going to say that because they did not win the race, it was not a success. I would disagree. They achieved success. It is just that Usain Bolt's success was greater, you know, than theirs. So there are different measures. You could have success, but another team or another person had a level of success that's higher than yours. And of course, obviously, we know great players don't win every single season, even if you're the MVP. So, being an MVP or being a great player does not mean that you will win all the time. Hoopinhoops.com.